Hey there, Meadowbrook kids. I'm so glad you decided to join us today. Well, today our ponder point is God inspires worship. All right, get that? God inspire worship. And today our Bible story is about King David and how he worshiped God with all of his heart. All right, but before we do that, I want to go over our Connect question. Our Connect question is this: what's your favorite worship song and why? All right, well, my favorite worship song is Reckless Love. I love singing out with the top of my lungs because I know God loves us endlessly. He loves us. He will do anything that we need so that way we can follow him. All right, we just have to ask him for it. And that's one of the reasons why I love Reckless Love. Now, we're gonna get ready to jump into our game. And this week, we're gonna have a space race, all right? So make sure you pick the right spacecraft to see who wins, all right? Go ahead and pick your spacecraft now.
Jesus is our righteousness. God keeps his promises. God's Son brings peace. God honors faith. God inspires worship. God is trustworthy. God is the one and only. God awakens us. God rescues. God is real. God is always at work. God restores. God is Lord of the harvest. The master builder, God's hand at work.
Have you ever had a chance to visit an art museum? I know it sounds kind of boring, but last year I went to a really big one in Philadelphia. I saw some of the most expensive art pieces in the world. And as I looked at the art, I like to wonder what might have inspired the artist to paint that picture. You know, we all get inspired to do different things. Maybe you get inspired to dance or to sing songs or to write. We all find our inspiration even from different places. Maybe you find it from school or your family or your friends. And in the Big God story this week, we're talking about the way King David was inspired by God. You see, David was inspired by God to worship. That means that David was so inspired by who God is and all that God had done for him that all he could think but do was to worship God. And David had a lot to thank God for. When we meet him in the Big God story, he's a shepherd boy. In fact, he's the youngest in his family with 7 older brothers. Imagine how that must have felt. God didn't care about David's age or appearance. He cared about his heart. David was described as a man after God's own heart. And God chose David to be king of Israel because he knew David would serve him with his whole heart. David was inspired to worship God in a number of ways. He wrote a number of the songs in the book of Psalms. David loved to worship God through writing songs. He didn't just write songs when he was worshiping and when he was feeling joyful. Instead, he worshiped when he was sad, when he was sick, or even when he was scared. Even when he was facing real big troubles, he wanted to worship God for who he is. David worshiped God in another way by trusting and relying on him, even in challenging situations. You see, God helped David kill a lion and a bear, and God even helped him defeat the giant Goliath. David continued to trust God even when he was king. God used David to bring the Ark of the Covenant back to his people. The Ark of the Covenant meant that God's presence dwelled among his people. And so when the Ark had been stolen, it was a real bad thing. But God helped David return it to the capital city of Israel, Jerusalem. David was so full of joy when God did that it says that in front of the whole country, he danced and he sang. He didn't care what anybody thought of him because he was so thankful for God. David didn't always get it right. He wasn't a perfect king, but he knew God and he knew that God had been good to him. So he worshiped God with all of his heart. God inspires worship. Do you know who God is? Can you see all the good things he's done for you? Take some time and let him know how much he means to you. Allow God to inspire your heart to worship him.